With the release of The Expendables 4, we now have 4 movies in the Expendables franchise, as it's now throwback action franchise that's coming back to like the 70s and 80s. So it is now time to rank the Expendables movies from the worst to the best. So easily in last place at number 4 is obviously The Expendables 4. This was a big disappointment, and I went into this knowing it was not going to be good. So, essentially, this is one of those movies that it's not good at all. It's pretty bad. It's a 2-star film for me out of 5. 2 out of 5, it's not good. Megan Fox. Ay, ay, ay. I have no idea why she keeps coming into action franchises. Like, she's not good in Transformers at all. She's one of the worst parts about the first two. And I don't like her in this either. I get some people find her fine. I don't. I think she's annoying. It feels like she's trying to be. It feels like she's trying to compete with Barney for the team leader. And Barney's played by Sylvester Stallone. She cannot hold a candle to him. And that's another thing. I hate that they sidelined Stallone in this. And it just feels very cheap because the entire point of this franchise is that they're like, it's like a callback and throwback to like the 70s and 80s type action movies where everything was practical, no CGI. And there's moments of that in like the first few, like, well, mostly 1 and 2 because 3 was watered down to PG-13. But this one, it's all green screen CGI. I don't think there's a real shot in this film. Simple things like Barney going up to Jason Statham's house is green screen and CGI. Well, mostly just green screen. The blood and gore is CGI. It is so unbelievably obvious. It is terrible. And why is 50 Cent in this film? He's not an action star. The entire point was that they're supposed to have action stars in this. This is by far, by a landslide, the worst team in the entire franchise. It's cheap. And to add insult to injury, they did what I hate what movie titles have to do. They put a number in there. So it's now, instead of just calling it The Expendables 4, it's now Expendables, which makes no sense. So this was a pretty big disappointment, and just skip through the rest of this because I'm going to go over a certain spoiler, but something I really did not enjoy was that they have Barney supposedly die, which I'm a Stallone fan. He's my favorite actor of all time. Barney's my favorite character in the entire franchise. Rocky Balboa is my favorite movie character of all time. John Rambo's in my top 3. I love Stallone. So when you kill him off, I'm not going to enjoy it. And it seems like they kill him off. So, and then but I at least felt partially emotional about it. But even though it wasn't built up, and all they do is pretty cheap what they do with it, but what to add insult to injury, they immediately retcon that in the ending scene later that Barney somehow survived, and it makes zero sense how they could. The way that they explain how he dies is like, oh come on, that is such a bad excuse. I hated the direction they went in with this movie. It feels cheap. It's by far the worst made of any of these films. Even if you think it's better than The Expendables 3, which I know somebody here who will remain anonymous does, I can say the worst made of all of them. Even if you think that the fourth one's better than the third one, the worst made is by far the fourth. So, all in all, a very disappointing movie that I really did not enjoy. Point of reference, I do not enjoy Expendables 4. I will go negative on that one. The rest, I will give a pass on. I have at least some amount of enjoyment with them, so I will go negative on the fourth one, but the other 3, from point of reference, now onward, there's a big leap in quality, and I now enjoy the rest. At number 3 is The Expendables 3. And like I said, there's a enormous leap in quality from number 4 to number 3. Film Kid is angry right now again. I'm really angering him in these videos that I've been doing lately. So I think that mostly what etches this one above the fourth one is I think the cinematography is better than this one. And it's a lot more practical with like the stunts they do. I am not a fan of the fact that they did water it down to PG-13. This is a hard R-rated franchise with the F-bombs they drop in the first two, and the immense amount of violence and gore. So this is a very hard R-rated franchise. Making a third film that's PG-13 does not work out at all. So I am much happier that there's an unrated cut. I believe I did see that one. I cannot remember. I need to watch the unrated cut. I'm gonna be watching that one for the big ranking. I've already watched the unrated cut of Live Free or Die Hard for our big ranking. Uh, if there's a PG-13 film in a franchise, usually they can at least get themselves an unrated cut. That usually is better. Like Terminator Salvation has a director's cut, which I believe is rated R. Terminator Genesis is PG-13, but I don't think it has an unrated cut. I believe it's unrated in some countries, but it's complicated. But anyway, I think that Stallone is not sidelined in this. He's still the main character, which is good to see that we at least get some more Stallone in here. Mel Gibson is such a great villain. I think that he might be I think he's my favorite villain in the entire franchise. It's between him and Van Damme in the second. So I am really happy that at least this villain is better. I cannot remember a single trait about the villain in the fourth film. Nothing. Which is what etches. That's another thing that etches third over that. And Arnold's in this, yeah. So I mean, getting Arnold in here and getting him make a reference about "get to the chopper," which is a line for Predator. One of the things I really enjoyed about this franchise is that the first three all have like references to like other things. Like in the first one, there's several different like types of lines that are references to certain things. The second one is bloated with them. Like you get Arnold in one scene saying "I'm back." You get him and Bruce Willis training Terminator Die Hard lines. "I'll be back." Yippee ki Just so many great lines from those two. They are gold in that one. So, and at least there's a reference in here to a different movie. So, and four, there's not a single good reference. There's not a single reference at all. It is just so unbelievably far removed from this franchise. It just feels like a generic action film where there's no one here that's able to make a reference because no one has a character like Bruce Willis or Arnold or Stallone who has like a extremely great 80s character, because this feels like the new version of the Expendables, which is another thing. This feels like a very dumb team. It doesn't feel like a very good team. I can barely remember anything about them. A buddy of mine, Nick, who's joining in on the action ranking we're doing soon, actually even gave them a name called the Forgettables. Extremely accurate. I remember the guy who plays Puss in Boots. He was one of them, who can be a bit annoying at times. I mean, he's funny, and like there's like an extremely funny line where Barney says, "Get out of the front seat. Christmas is coming in." I think he says something along the lines of, but it's June. But because Christmas is the name of Jason Statham's character, so I at least have more enjoyment with this one, and it's good to see Harrison Ford in a role. I wish they didn't have to take Bruce Willis out to do this, but I believe I think this was made in like 2015. It was, yeah. So I think Willis may have retired by then. I think that's why. But I mean, I still do really enjoy this. I still have some enjoyment with this movie, so I would much rather watch this one than watch the fourth one. Our runner-up is The Expendables. Yeah, you didn't think I was really going to be going in backwards order. This is not Jaws. I'm not ranking the Jaws franchise. So, anyway, The Expendables, again, there's now another big leap in quality from The Expendables 3 to The Expendables. I do enjoy The Expendables 3, but I do have a lot more enjoyment with The Expendables. And I think that it's a pretty decent movie as like a throwback action movie. So, I think it's a bit more on the serious side at times. Like, I watched the director's cut for this movie, which, looking back, was a bit of a mistake because there's some really funny lines in the theatrical cut that I really enjoyed. In the Expendables, the director's cut is a lot more serious, so it takes out some of that lines, some of the really funny jokes to crack the tension, which I feel like it's a bit too serious. Like, when you have a movie like The Expendables where it's like pinning all the greatest action stars of like the 80s, 70s, 90s, it's just, it needs a bit more humor and levity. It needs to be a bit more self-aware of how it's a bit more funny. So I think that it's a lot better when it's like trying to be I think it's a lot better when it's trying to poke fun at that. So it still has its moments. It's fun. I think Jason Statham and Barney are still great. They have chemistry in all the movies. 4, they also have a decent chemistry. It's nowhere near as fleshed as it is in the first 3. Their chemistry is great in there. Well, I mean, 3, they barely have any confrontation with each other. Although same thing with 4. The second was really the last movie where we actually get to see him like having a confrontation with each other. So, I mean, it's a really decent movie. So I have a lot of fun with it. It's throwback. The second act kind of drags a bit. Like it can be a bit boring, but I think that it's fun in certain regards, like how Gunnar is the person that plays Ivan Drago. I cannot remember his name. Dolph Lundgren. Dolph Lundgren, who plays a Gunner. I like how he has part of a dark side to him, so he wants to hang one of the pirates, or and like everyone's telling him no, and it's pretty funny. So I really enjoy that part about it, and I think that it's extremely fun. That scene with Arnold, Stallone, and Bruce Willis. I am not worthy. We are not worthy to get a scene involving the 3 of them in the same room. That's like heaven right there. I just so wish that it could have been in the 80s that they did it. I mean, imagine if we had gotten that in the 80s. That would have been the moment of the 80s. Nothing could have topped that. That would have been awesome. But sadly, this had to come in 2010. Yeah, I think it was 2010. So, sadly, it wasn't as memorable as it could have been. But I think it's not as good as it should be. Like when you have a premise with all these action stars getting together to like make this movie, it's not as good as it should be, but it's still pretty entertaining. So I do have a lot of fun with this movie as like a throwback action film. But easily coming to first place for me is the Expendables 2. And this is a great action flick that, in my opinion, is great. I have so much fun with this film. And it feels like this one's more self-aware of the concept that you're bringing together all these big action stars and like them being self-aware. So it's giving it it's being a bit more lighthearted, and it's good to have some more lighthearted moments. And it's pretty good the balance, because there's times where with the violence and gore like that, it has some moments where it has some tonal shifts, like where they're like joking 1 minute and the next minute you see Van Damme kicking a knife into Liam Hemsworth, which is pretty brutal, I can tell you. So I think that there's so many great moments in here, whether you're talking about Chuck Norris getting to be in this film and him cracking one of the greatest jokes of all time.
I heard another rumor that you were bitten by a king cobra.
Yeah, I was. But after 5 days of agonizing pain, the cobra died.
Whether you're talking about Arnold and Bruce getting their own little moment together.
I'm almost out. I'll be back. You've been back enough. I'll be back.
Yippee-ki-yay.
Whether you're talking about just these great lines between like Barney and Christmas, they had their lines together. Their banter is gold in this film. They are so funny the way they play off each other, and I love the way that because the events of the first film, how Christmas's wife keeps calling, and Stallone keeps like making jokes about it and calling. Making jokes about it, and I just love their banter between each other. I think the comedy lands way better in this film than it does in the first, way better. So I think that it's much better. It's more self-aware. I think they update the cast way more. This time you get Chuck Norris. Well, you get most of the returning cast, pretty much all of them. Bruce Willis and Arnold are in here way more. You get several scenes with them in there. But this time, you also get Chuck Norris and Van Damme and Liam Hemsworth. Liam Hemsworth's in it for a very small time still. They update the cast more, and it's just so awesome, which is something I felt like the first 2 were gaining, but the last 2, the 3 and 4, kind of lost track of that you're supposed to like be getting all these action stars together, and it felt like after 3 they kind of ended that, and they kind of started to go a bit stale. So I think 2 really is like that fine line where they finally knew exactly where they were going, and I think the comedy in here is gold at times. I think it's absolutely hilarious, so I do love this film. It is so fun, and I think that Stallone is just so charismatic in here. So for me, without question, my favorite in the Expendables franchise is the Expendables 2. There you have it, everyone. There's my ranking of all four Expendables movies. In last place is the Expendables 4. In third place is the Expendables 3. In second place is the Expendables. And at number one is the Expendables 2. And this is one of those action franchises that is meant to be like a throwback. It's not meant to be like the greatest action franchise of all time, like Mission Impossible or John Wick. So this is definitely a pretty decent franchise, even if we do have one stinker in here that is pretty bad. So I had a lot of fun with this. Make sure to share your ranking of all four of these movies in the comments, and make sure but I would love to have a discussion with you about that. I usually do have discussions with my subscribers because I have time to do that because of the fact that I don't have too many. I'm nearly at 400, by the way, so make sure to subscribe to me if you're willing to, because I am going for a lot more subscribers lately. So thank you all so much for that. This has been a great job on YouTube. Make sure to follow me on Letterboxd. You can find that up on my channel. I have a link to it around my channel somewhere, so you can find it. So make sure to follow me on Letterboxd so you can see rankings early before they happen. So make sure to follow me on there, and make sure to have a good one. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a good one.